then we'll get started. So thank you for waiting. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. On behalf of the Environmental Finance Center Network, welcome to today's webinar on lessons learned in green stormwater infrastructure maintenance. My name is Avery Davis, and I am from the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. And before we begin, we're going to cover a few logistics, and then we will get started. So during the webinar today, everyone will be kept on mute to ensure audio quality. If you have a question, you're welcome to submit those in the GoToWebinar question dialog box anytime throughout the session. We will be using Slido at the end of the session. We'll have about 20 minutes for a facilitated Q&A. So if you submit questions in the questions box, I'll be sure to enter those in our Slido program. After the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email that includes a link to the recording and other information you may need. You can also download the slides from today in the Handouts tab in your GoToWebinar control panel. This webinar has not been submitted for pre-approval of continuing education credits. The eligible attendees will receive a certificate of attendance for their personal record. To receive a certificate for this session, you must attend for the entire webinar and register and attend individually using your real name and unique email address. Certificates will be sent via email within 30 days of the webinar date. And if you have any questions or need assistance, please contact us at smallsystems@syr.edu. Now for a little bit about us. The Environmental Finance Center Network provides training and technical assistance to small water and wastewater systems. I don't know, my slides are changing. To small water and wastewater systems in all 50 US states and territories through our building technical, managerial, and financial capacity programs. If your community or utility needs assistance with drinking water or wastewater system management, please feel free to contact us through our request form, which I will be sharing shortly in the chat. One of the many ways the Environmental Finance Center Network can support your community or utility is through our free funding application support. Struggling with an infrastructure funding application? Falling short on project funding? Not sure where to start? The EFCN is here to help. Please use the link in the chat to submit a request and receive tailored support based on your project needs. And last but not least, on that note, I would like to introduce our presenters for today. Welcome to April Mendez, the CEO, and Hannah Prax, sorry if I butchered that, Hannah, professional engineer and senior project manager, who are joining us from Greenprint Partners, as well as Aaron Kirkland, operations superintendent, joining us from the Philadelphia Water Department. Welcome, everyone. In April, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thanks to the Environmental Finance Center for hosting this webinar. Very excited to talk with you all today about lessons learned in green infrastructure maintenance. Can we just confirm that everybody can see my slides okay? Great.
Yep, looks good on my end.
Okay, excellent. Great. So as Avery said, I'm April Mendez, CEO for Greenprint Partners. Greenprint is a planning, design, and engineering firm that specializes in community-centered approaches to water infrastructure and urban greening. And we have a particular specialty in green stormwater infrastructure and have been doing that work for some time across the country. We're joined today by Hannah Kaperzak, who is going to speak from her perspective in running a community-based green stormwater infrastructure program for the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District that includes significant insights around maintenance planning, maintenance implementation, maintenance management funding. And Erin Kirkland from the Philadelphia Water Department, who has a really robust and deep experience both in workforce development around green infrastructure maintenance and around the implementation of maintenance for one of the largest green infrastructure systems in the country for the Philadelphia Water Department. So very excited to share these two experts with you and their insights for today. Our learning objectives for today, first, if you're kind of new to kind of just starting the journey around maintaining green infrastructure or planning green infrastructure for maintainability, we'll introduce you to some key challenges that folks typically face. And think about how to integrate those maintenance considerations in at the front end in the design phase. So you don't get to the point in your work where you've got it designed, you've got it built, and then oops, we actually have a bunch of problems with the way that it was designed and constructed that make maintenance really difficult. We'll talk a bit about strategies for how to build staff capacity and contractor capacity for maintenance, including workforce development strategies. And then we'll also talk about how you think about managing maintenance, not just at a site-by-site level, but kind of at a programmatic level. So hopefully some of that is enticing to all of you. And now we'd love to get a sense of where you all are coming from. And we're going to be using an app called Slido today for hearing from you what your questions and comments are, and also getting a little bit of insight from you. So go ahead and join slido.com. You can either use this QR code with your camera, or you can enter a web browser and put in slido.com and then enter this Slido number 30249829. So I'll pause on this slide just for a second to get you into the Slido, and then we'll have our first Slido poll. Okay, and here is our first Slido poll. Looks like we've already got some folks jumping in on this, which is great. So our opening question is, where is your agency, whatever agency you're coming representing, or where are you personally on the green stormwater infrastructure implementation journey? Are you here just exploring the possibilities? Have you already been implementing projects on a regular basis? Are you just kind of planning to get something started? All the options are changing as I'm speaking, so I'm flipping around here. Or perhaps you're not really interested in implementing green infrastructure, you're just here to learn. And that's totally fine too. So excited to see where people are at. Looks like we've got 40 responses so far out of, I think, 60 folks present or so. So we'll give you another minute here. Great. Okay, so it looks like we've got a interesting blend of folks who are just at the very outset, just kind of exploring the possibilities, trying to get a sense perhaps of what would this require of us if we were going to do this intentionally. How can we kind of set ourselves up to be able to do this work effectively and not get ourselves into hot water around green infrastructure maintenance if we are implementing a lot of green infrastructure. And then folks who have already been implementing projects regularly. So it looks like we've skipped over the 2 stages between that of I've committed to something, we're actually planning on getting something launched, and we've already implemented some early projects. Looks like we have 18% of people who are in that kind of early stage piloting and planning bucket. So Hannah and Erin, excited for the 2 of you to be able to address both people who are coming in thinking about just what might this look like, and also address people who have already been implementing projects and probably already have a pretty good sense of some of the maintenance challenges that they've been encountering. All right. See if we can advance our slides here. All right. So I'm going to turn things over to Aaron to speak about the Philadelphia Water Department's internal models and his personal experiences.
Thank you, April, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron Kirkland. I am the superintendent of the Green Stormwater Operations Unit within the Philadelphia Water Department. I've been with the utility for 10 years now, and I've spent over 10 years in the Green Stormwater Infrastructure field. I was first introduced to GSI serving as a member in Power Corps under the AmeriCorps umbrella. And during my service, we supported PWD's mission by assisting in the upkeep of these systems through small trash pickup, weed removal, minor tasks. But when we were being trained to maintain these systems, we were taught to take the before and after pictures. And pictures really highlight the impact of one single maintenance visit. But after my service with Power Corps, I was hired by PWD as one of the first community apprentices. The work was new, the job titles didn't exist yet, and most of what we were doing was being built for the first time. So we were at a point where a lot of other smaller cities may be at today. But during my journey, I moved through multiple leadership roles as the unit was developing, many of them before they officially existed. So I did a lot of acting. My previous manager, he always said, Aaron, we're building the plane as we fly. So today I have the privilege of leading the unit I helped build. I am proof that investing in people works. And what I want to share today is lessons we've learned over the last decade. We've built a workforce from the ground up. We've expanded internal capacity, and we've elevated the professionalism of GSI maintenance in Philadelphia. Next slide. Before we talk about workforce and structure, I want to highlight number one is that we maintain living systems. And one of the things we need to be clear about with GSI is that GSI maintenance is different from standard grounds work. On the left side of my slide, you'll see a PWD vegetated system. These systems contain 76 different plant species, and that's not including the weeds. But now we compare that to a Parks and Recs lawn that is right outside of our GSI system. You're looking at 3 to 5 intended species. So of course, those skill sets needed are very different. And this difference matters because in GSI, our staff are not simply mowing grass. They're not just weed whacking, they're managing an engineered landscape. So our maintenance strategies change by plant type, by locations. And these systems are in urban areas. So pruning, rejuvenation cuts, mulching, irrigation, cutbacks, where Parks and Rec focuses mainly on mowing, string trimming. Our staff have to understand the ecology of a full stormwater system. So what I've learned is that GSI maintenance is a technical profession. It demands a higher skill set, and our workforce model should reflect that reality. As we built Green Cities Clean Water across Philadelphia, the number of systems under GSO continued to increase over time. It was incremental growth. If you look at the map on the left, you'll see over 2,000 stormwater management practices citywide, and our ground maintenance team is responsible for a large portion of those systems. We oversee 3 districts in Philadelphia, and those districts have some of the highest density GSI zones in the city. On the right, you see a chart of how our workload grew year over year. Again, this was incremental growth. We went from 21 pilot sites in 2011, 100% contracted out, to over 500 stormwater management practices maintained internally. And if you look at these dots represent real work: tree trenches, rain gardens, green roofs, planters, bump outs. This slide tells a story, and this story shows why the unit had to evolve. The scope of work increased, skill sets had to evolve, and most importantly, the expectations of the public increased. That's why we push towards internalizing the work, building teams. We get the flexibility of our maintenance teams, and creating a sustainable pipeline. Next slide, please. Our workforce model is centers around apprenticeship. Our apprentices are the building blocks of our unit. In this slide, you'll see 3 pillars: on the job training, being out in the field. They're learning real system maintenance, mentorship, pairing new staff with senior workers or our crew chiefs, who are essentially our foremen. And then we have classroom instruction, and where you get the technical background to support your field skills. We're leaning towards moving some of our trainings into an LMS system, but these trainings aren't by accident. We built this structure because GSI maintenance requires specialization. We invest in our staff, we build those skills. As you can see on the right, the certifications: Clean Water Certificate Program by the Center for Watershed Protection Agency, pesticide usage, CityWorks, our asset management system. But in the field, the skills expand even further, from plant ID, planting, mulching, structural repairs, erosion control. And we also highlight our planning side. We want our staff to understand surveying, system inspections, and landscape planning. So this training structure is what allows us to take someone from apprentice to technician, from technician to supervisor. It creates a true ladder, not just a job. Next slide. In FY25, our crews completed over 6,000 work orders. This slide is important because it breaks down major categories. Each category ties to a specialized skill. You'll notice that the largest bar on the right is over 3,000 work orders dedicated just to surface maintenance. Our surface maintenance, routine maintenance, is frequent. We make sure we see our sites every 30 days by inspection or initiation of a maintenance event. And that's everything too, from managing engineered soil to clearing sediment to maintaining drainage pathways, even aesthetic cleaning of trash pickup. But then you see these other work order numbers: 759 watering work orders, 324 mulching work orders, 262 trench drain work orders, 226 pruning work orders, and structural repairs, 121. And what this really tells us is that the work is diverse, it's constant, and it's specialized. These photos really illustrate the reality that structural repairs: we have to repair our dissipators, we have to expand our tree pits, we have to clean trench drains on a regular, we have to do surface watering, porous plowing in the wintertime. This isn't just mowing grass. This is managing green stormwater infrastructure at scale. And the data makes the case for why the future of workforce needs more specialized positions or better fitting job title series. In the beginning, we started off by adopting the Parks and Recs titles, but now we're looking at that like we may have outgrown those titles. Next slide, please. This final slide, it really captures where our department is going. It's the future of GSO. And on the left, you'll see our current organizational ladder. I started with partnerships because that's where we pull our talent from. We have PowerCore PHL, who I mentioned earlier, a workforce development group, who I came from. Then we have partnerships that I've built since I've been here, going to local high schools that have a horticulture focus and trying to pull talent from those schools. Then uh, they come in as apprentices. Apprenticeship program is 6 to 12 months. It's a work-student relationship where you pair with a mentor. But we don't hire an apprentice unless we have a vacancy for a permanent position. That title then leads us to the ground maintenance worker one. Is entry level. It understands the basics of GSI, has some understanding of tool usage. They promote to the GM2, which is operates equipment, repairs equipment, drives trailer attachments. And then the crew chief, who I mentioned earlier, is the foreman, leading the team daily, communicates through our asset management system, and our supervisors oversee these districts while implementing the QA/QC efforts. But I really want to highlight what's on the right. And keep in mind, these are just concepts, but we could be heading this way. If we look at masonry technicians, managing dissipators, head walls, concrete structures, arborist technicians, we need someone to do tree health, pruning, removals, risk assessment, heavy equipment operators. In the future, we'll have skid steers, mini excavators. They'll have to navigate our porous plows. Landscape technicians is what I really want to highlight because I feel like our grounds titles should be changed to this landscape technician position where there's the horticulture focus, plant propagation and restoration. But right now I'm doing a lot of leadership and training. I'm putting trainings together, but that could be a potential position in the future for internal development and standardization. These roles represent the maturity of the industry. GSI is no longer an experiment, it's a full municipal workforce discipline. And as our system count grows from 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 and work orders increase year over year, we will need to grow from 40 staff to 80 dedicated GSO maintenance professionals. This is the model that will sustain the next decade of Green Cities Clean Waters. Thank you.
Fantastic, Aaron. Thank you so much. For folks who have questions for Aaron, I'd encourage you to go ahead and pop those into the Q&A box, and Avery is going to transport those over for our Q&A segment at the end. We'll have about 20 minutes together. And Aaron, just to tee up some questions for you, it's so fascinating to hear your journey of having grown through the PWD Green City Clean Waters program and understanding what maintenance looks like and what's really required to do the maintenance effectively, but then also what staffing needs to look like and what kinds of positions and roles people need to have and what kinds of training people are going to need. And so I think it might be helpful for folks who are participating in the webinar today to actually see if you have these different job positions and job grades, if there's a document that you could share with us that has all of the jobs articulated in additional detail so people could take a look and say, okay, I think we need this position and this position to start, or we already have somebody who could fit, these kinds of responsibilities, that might be easy for folks to take a look at and start utilizing. Now I'm going to turn it over to Hannah Kaperzak to talk about Greenprint's work in Milwaukee.
Great, thanks, April. Hi, everyone. Hannah Kaperzak. I am the program manager of the Fresh Coast Green Communities program. On the screen, you can see a couple of our projects that are currently in our maintenance management phase. And just a little background on what the Fresh Coast Green Communities program is it's available to folks all across Milwaukee County, but it's aimed at a little bit larger green infrastructure projects. So we're not looking at like a rain barrel at a personal home. We're looking more at commercial scale, large fire retention basin, constructed wetlands, maybe a large parking lot that needs a rehabilitation and requires stormwater management. It is open to both private and public properties. And the goal of this program is to install 15 to 18 million gallons of green infrastructure storage by 2030. This incentive program was designed by the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District, MMSD, in partnership with Greenprint Partners. And we are the program managers, so we really get to be involved from the very start to the very end of these projects. What that includes is outreach and community engagement to find some projects, as well as making sure we're prioritizing community needs across all of our designs. We work on conceptual plans, feasibility analyses, and then we manage multiple local civil engineering firms who bring the projects through detailed design and permitting. Greenprint Partners then publicly bids all of our construction projects. We manage all the procurement, we hire the construction crews, we manage the construction itself, going out on site to make sure everything's going well, in conjunction with our local engineering partners. And then once the project is constructed, we go to bid again, and this is for finding maintenance crews. We're responsible for the maintenance of sites for 5 years after the completion of construction, and that's to really make sure all the plants going in are fully established. All of that comes at no cost to property owners who are voluntarily participating, so it's a pretty neat program MMSD set up that we're thrilled to be a part of. Next slide, please, April. Thank you. Today we're here to talk about maintenance, and I wanted to share a little bit about how we try to incorporate maintenance considerations throughout every step of the project lifecycle to ensure success. We're really lucky playing this programmatic management role that we're able to be a part of all of these different steps. So the first step, meet landowners where they're at. Maintenance considerations really start day one for us. When we're meeting a landowner, we're chatting with them about their site constraints, what they want to see, what they want to prioritize in this project, but we're also having really upfront conversations about what maintenance they're capable of. The last thing we want to do is design something and install something that goes in all shiny and new, and then they're unable to maintain it. So, for example, if we're working with a small school and their plan is to have a volunteer force of, the science teachers and some PTO volunteers maintain the green infrastructure, that's fantastic. We probably don't want to design a whole prairie reestablishment field where they have to be out there doing, fire burns and trying to identify weeds versus plants in this big field. And so what we would more lean towards is maybe a beautiful garden still filled with native vegetation, but a much more limited plant palette. We would have very identifiable plants, plant them more in clusters. So you'd have a big cluster of milkweed next to a big cluster of black-eyed Susans, and it'd be really easy to see, okay, there's a weed coming in, that's the odd man out, that's the one we need to take out for volunteer forces. Next, I have hire a landscaping contractor for design reviews. So after we decide what we're going to design, we start going into the detailed design of the project, figuring out all the little nuances. And a lot of times the way this goes is the engineers design something, then a construction crew builds it, then a maintenance crew a year later is hired to maintain it, and there is not really a great feedback loop between those maintenance contractors and the engineers designing it. So that means us engineers, we put in what we assume is working flawlessly, continue to design it project after project, because maintenance is so separated from the designs, we aren't hearing any feedback on the maintainability of projects. What's really neat about Fresh Coast Green Communities at this programmatic level is we get to be involved in all the steps. And so what we did was we hired a maintenance crew to be a consultant during our engineering phase. They come through way early in the engineering process and identify ways to make our projects easier to maintain. This includes identifying some critical flaws, as well as elevating things that they've learned in the field that work well and things that don't. Their input on our projects has been incredible. It shaped a lot of our designs, and some small tweaks in the early design phases have had really large cost savings for us during maintenance. So it's a neat way we've been trying to kind of close that feedback loop and continuously improve our projects. Next, I have publicly bid maintenance with the pathway for more firms. Through our program, we are required to publicly bid all of our projects and select the lowest qualified bidder. This has been a challenge. We're trying to strike the balance between making sure our contractors are qualified, especially as Aaron was mentioning, there's so much native landscaping knowledge needed to be a GSI maintenance crew. We also don't want our pre-qualifications to be so prohibitive that folks aren't bidding and we aren't getting anyone to do the work. So we're continuously refining our process, trying to figure out how to strike that balance and be successful with this. But as of today, the approach we're using is MMSD has set pre-qualifications for native landscaping. We've decided if you are pre-qualified for them, you're qualified to work on our projects. However, if you are not formally pre-qualified, you don't quite have all their strict pre-qualification needs, but you do have some experience, then you can still submit to your bids to us, but you do have to show that you have experience and that you have references for managing this native landscaping. This has opened up doors to a couple new firms that we've been able to work with, which has been great. And more importantly, it's opened up doors for them because they're gaining additional experience so that they will eventually be able to join MMSD's pre-qualified list. Fourth, I have conduct regular site inspections. So regardless of how qualified your maintenance contractors are, we've found it's really helpful to have a third-party maintenance specialist out checking our sites. Our cadence has been having them go out about once a month, except for some of our challenging sites. We've had them out every other week during this first growing season, just to make sure we're flagging any problems early. So for example, if a certain weed is about to go to seed and the contractor really needs to get out there and do some sort of weed control right away, having that visual inspection can help us stay on top of things to make sure they don't get out of control and we aren't spending a ton of time and energy trying to get things back under control because of that. That has been really helpful in helping our sites get really green and pretty weed-free this first growing season. Last section I have is training property owners at handoff. So with our program, after those first 5 years of included maintenance, we do hand the maintenance off to the property owner. The Fresh Coast Green Communities program started in 2022. So if you do the math, this hasn't happened yet. So I don't have exact examples from Fresh Coast Green Communities, but Green Current Partners in general, we've been working in markets across the nation where we have been handing over green infrastructure to property owners for years. One of the things we really strive to do is make sure this is a thoughtful handoff that really sets the property owners up for success in maintaining their sites. We want them to feel like they were trained well and feel empowered to take care of their new sites. Most of the time, what that looks like is we're out in the middle of the biobasin with them. We're weeding together, we're learning together. We have a big sheet of common weeds to look for, as well as a big sheet of what their plants are and which ones should stay in the basins. And we're out practicing that identification together until they feel comfortable maintaining their sites. We also always include a written operation and maintenance manual. This is a protocol, a checklist of everything they need to do with their new green infrastructure. This is particularly useful if there's turnover in an organization, so that someone always has a handbook on what needs to be done on that site. And then finally, some property owners, they don't want to do the maintenance or they can't do the maintenance, but they do have an operational budget to hire. And then we assist them with connecting them to resources or helping them find qualified contractors to help maintain their sites. I'll hand it back to April now, but thank you and happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Hannah. I love that image of you and your team members out side by side, weeding and identifying plants alongside the property owner and their maintenance resources. And also just this program designed by Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District is so innovative when it comes to how they anticipated the need for a genuine commitment, both financial commitment and time commitment on the maintenance side. It's the only program that we've seen thus far where a utility has committed in advance to the first 5 years of that establishment period and said, we know that things are going to succeed or fail in those first 5 years. So we're going to make sure that we have the budget available in this contract and the expectations set for that establishment period. So really exciting to hear about that. Great, so now we're going to move into our Q&A section, and for folks in the audience, oh, go ahead. Okay, so for folks in the audience, you can go ahead and start putting in your questions for Erin and Hannah into the Slido. So just go back to your Slido. If you have questions, you can go ahead and pop those in. If you've already put in questions in the GoToMeeting, then Avery is going to be porting those over. So those will show up here. You don't need to restate your question. As people are thinking, I'm going to kick us off with a couple of questions. So the first question is for both Erin and Hannah. Knowing that we have people here who are at various stages of scaling their green infrastructure, both folks who are just kind of exploring it and folks who have done a couple of projects and folks who have been doing projects regularly for a while, what do you see as the most important insights for municipalities to act on, kind of who are at those earlier stages and at maybe smaller scales than the full Milwaukee County scale and the full Philadelphia city scale? And Aaron, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, so if you noticed in my slide, our growth was incremental. It was a necessity, necessity breeds innovation. So we had to fill those gaps until, and I see a question in the chat about convincing internalized teams. That kind of ties in too, because if you're handling something prior before having all the resources, but you can project what you need and be vocal about the needs for your unit, you have a better chance of growth and sustainable growth. So I mean, we went from 21 piloted sites, 100% contracted out, and to 500 SMPs overseen by us. That wasn't overnight. So procurement of trucks and vehicles, tools needed, all those things had to be slowly accumulated in order us to get where we are today. So yeah, I would say look at where you're at, analyze what you need, and find somebody that can lead that goes above and beyond.
Love it. Thank you. Hannah.
Sure. I think many of the municipalities we've worked with start by running kind of public programs, and those are easiest to dive into because you own all the land and you can start having workforce development like Aaron spoke about. And kind of the next step for scaling is when municipalities start looking at private property incentive programs as well. And that is really critical if a municipality wants to commit to using green stormwater infrastructure to be a big part of managing their stormwater, private properties need to be part of the picture as well. I think, as you mentioned, April, so many of those programs do not include maintenance, and including it just in these pilot programs as part of what is included in the incentives, I think is critical for really helping get these pilot programs going. It empowers property owners to make sure their projects are successful, the ones that are volunteering, but B, I mean, we've all seen rain gardens that have not been maintained and they're just kind of weedy messes, and that's not really inspiring anyone to raise their hand and participate in these new programs. And so having these beautiful examples for pilot programs where the plants really get established well, I think really helps with the beginnings to be able to scale and have great participation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Hannah. Great. So it looks like we have a number of questions coming in. So we'll go ahead and jump to these questions. And then Hannah and Aaron, I've got a couple more questions for you that I'll hold off and see how much time we've got. So our first question is, what is the most difficult GSI feature to maintain? And we'd love to hear from both of you on that. So let's start with Aaron.
So I mean, time intensity, labor, I would say like our larger rain gardens are harder to maintain, especially when you have a plant pilot that's real diverse. And that's where your training really comes in at with plant identification and understanding the system. We also do like pre-construction walkthroughs, post-construction walkthroughs, and we make sure our crews are there too to see how the site initially looked, so that when they go to maintain it, they can always bring it back to the early stages. But yeah, a lot of time is spent on the larger rain gardens just because of the massiveness of the vegetated area.
Great. I would think one thing we talk a lot about when we're starting these is if we want to use plugs like small plants planted in the ground or seed an area. And it is a lot cheaper to seed a big area than it is to put plugs in the ground, but then it all comes up as this kind of commingled prairie. And those, as Aaron was saying, they're very specialized to maintain, and they're a lot harder to make sure the weeding goes well and that they establish well. And so I think that the plugged plantings with mulch around them that look a little more like traditional gardens are easier for less specialized folks to maintain. That being said, after they establish, prairies are usually a bit more robust versus these smaller plug plantings. They have to do much more weeding on, and so I think it does change with time a bit too, which ones are more challenging and which ones are more robust.
Great, thank you. All right, Aaron, we've got a couple questions for you coming up here. First, how were those above you in PWD convinced that internalizing and having a whole section was needed. I know you addressed that a bit earlier, but is there anything else you want to say on that?
No, I would just add that again, it became a necessity when we seen the flexibility of having an internal maintenance team and the gap in between a maintenance visit and how you can really lose a system due to obnoxious weeds that will quickly take over. So, I mean, it was just logical that we have to do something. That workforce development pipeline may have helped too in pushing that message, bringing in people from the community and saying, hey, you can come work for the city, you can work on these systems that are right in your community. And on top of that, you get passion from the staff that live in those communities and then doing the work. You know, it becomes personal work when you go that route. So, I mean, everything makes sense. I know earlier we talked about the triple bottom line, community beautification, environmental sustainability, and job creation. So I think that was always built in. The way we scaled out, I don't know if that was always a thing, but I think because of the work that we did, the work orders we got done, and the way we were able to adapt, we got a lot of support, and we continue to get support.
Love that. Could you also speak to how your program is funded and what its annual operating budget is?
I really can't speak to that. I don't have that information right now.
Okay. Hannah, can you share a link or an example of the maintenance handbook or checklist that's given to the property owner at handoff?
Absolutely. I think I'll have to chat with the organizers of how to get that to you, but happy to include it as a follow-up. Documentation, if that works.
Wonderful. Great. And then a question perhaps for both of you. How do you educate a municipality on the value of green infrastructure? How do you even build that case to get people bought in and invest in it?
I can say the reason I fell in love with working with green stormwater infrastructure is it just is so multi-beneficial. It has the obvious stormwater components, but it also can, you know, if you use a bump out, it can help with traffic calming. If you add trees, it can add shade and help with urban heat island effect. It can be beautifying, it can be educational, clean the air. There's just so many different benefits green infrastructure provides. And so if I were trying to educate a municipality on green infrastructure, I would first start with asking what are their priorities and then match my education to show how green infrastructure can help them with their priorities and which ones they value the most would probably help sway what types of green infrastructure is most valuable to them and works best in their municipality.
Mm-hmm. And maybe a flip side of this question that both Hannah and Aaron, you could both address as well is, what are reasons that you typically see municipalities being hesitant to move in the direction of investing in green infrastructure? Is it, you know, we're used to doing gray infrastructure, that's what we know, we're set up for that, this is too new, we don't really know how to do it, or are there other reasons? So let's go to Aaron and then we can pop back to Hannah if you have anything else to add on that.
Yeah, and Hannah, I totally agree. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself, all the cool benefits of GSI. I also want to highlight the Green Infrastructure Leadership Exchange, connecting with them. We're members of the Philadelphia Water Department. You get brought into a room with other cities and they talk about some of these challenges in their peer learning circles. So I would say connecting with a platform that exists that is advocating for GSI in cities, and that's one I would recommend. But the flip side of it is that everybody's not excited about GSI, right? I mean, sometimes you're taking parking spaces with bump outs. There's a lot of people that may not totally see the benefits, you know. So we have to educate. So at all of our systems, we have posts that explains what we're doing. My early days, you know, 9, 10 years ago, community members they didn't understand what was happening, but we believe that our staff are community ambassadors, so we equip them with the knowledge. We have handouts in the truck that they can educate the community as they're working. But I think understanding where we're at, like globally with climate change and everything else, GSI makes sense. You know, you are managing stormwater and you're fighting these other issues. Some cities I know, like us, we have to meet our compliance needs. So we're federally mandated to do something about these overflows. We're trying to reduce overflows by 85%. But some cities I know Raleigh, North Carolina, they might not be under compliance. So their advocating may have been different. So connecting to the Green Infrastructure Leadership Exchange may help you connect to those cities that may have the same challenges.
Mhm. Great. So I'm hearing a lot around kind of multi-benefit value of green infrastructure, kind of a dig once mentality, or a we like to call it pet two cats with one hand, or feed two birds with one seed kind of approach. And also just the compliance side is really the most critical driver in terms of people adopting green infrastructure. All right, so our next question is, thank you for these great presentations. For the MMSD program, Hannah, how long does it typically take property owners to get comfortable with O&M at their sites?
That's a great question, and to be honest, we haven't experienced it yet. We just finished constructing our first set of projects about 1.5 years ago, and so they're going through their first growing season with maintenance under our management, so it has not been any property owner's responsibility yet to take care of their sites. That being said, some property owners are out there much more often than others, kind of slowly learning and seeing and just being present to kind of soak up information, and our contractors and maintenance inspectors have been happy to answer questions along the way. And so just starting to get familiar with the process throughout the 5 years rather than right at the end having to learn everything, I think has been helpful for the learning styles of some of our property owners. But I'm very, very excited to try it out and get back to you in a couple of years on how long it typically takes for them to feel good about what they're doing.
Do you have any additional insights, Hannah, from the other private property work that we've done in other cities?
Yeah, I would say that typically once we leave a site, we leave them feeling pretty good about what their plant identification is. And again, our systems, we try not to be quite as diverse as like PWD's, who's being managed by a professional staff. So we wouldn't necessarily have 76 different species in our biobasin. We would have a much smaller palette, so that is easier for them to get familiar with pretty quickly. And then in terms of the kind of watering and making sure everything's pruned and mulched, we are present and checking out our sites. And so we can stop by and let them know, hey, this is probably something you should be doing soon, or help them actually do it. And I think that has helped get our early projects succeeding quickly.
Great, thank you. And a related question, what is the longest existing project that the experts, Erin and Hannah, have been involved in? And what natural processes in those cases have overridden human involvement? Erin, can you address that one?
So I know one of our sites that we maintained maybe around 2011, 2012, this location was constructed. There were some early design issues on the subsurface level, but natural, like I said earlier, if you abandon the maintenance on these sites for too long, then you get overgrowth very quickly, and they choke out the desirables, and your investment is gone, you know. So that's one of the longest sites that we've been maintaining. If that answers the question, I don't know if I fully understood it.
Yeah, I think that, go ahead, Hannah.
I was just going to share one from St. Louis that we did probably 5 or 6 years ago. One of the issues of natural processes overriding our human involvement, I'm not quite sure if it's fully natural, but if the lawn is not mowed, the normal lawn around it, and it goes to seed, all the seeds can very easily blow into, or the rain can bring them into our biobasins, and then you have all your native plants, but you also have all your turf grass trying to grow in there. And so one thing we've learned early on is encouraging not just maintenance of your basin, but around the basin. If you have just turf grass around it, that needs to be properly maintained to make your life a lot easier. So that's one of our longest ones where we've had to go out there and help pull out grass quite a bit to let the native plants thrive a little more.
Fantastic. And the next question is, do you use plants native to the area? Hannah, do you want to start us off with that one?
Yeah, absolutely. We do primarily use native plants in our designs. We're particularly looking for plants that have really good deep root systems. A, so that they soak in the stormwater better, and then B, if there's an extended drought, they have these deep roots, and so they don't require as much watering needs. That being said, there are exceptions where we will not use a native plant. For example, if we are working with a site and we're putting a garden right along a sidewalk or right in a parking lot, and we live in Wisconsin, we salt everything pretty heavily in the winter to have safety for pedestrians on sidewalks. And so in those areas, we would opt for really salt tolerant plants over necessarily native plants. I mean, best would be if it's both, but we definitely want to make sure it survives. And so sometimes we'll opt for something that's not quite as native, depending on the specific site conditions.
Great, thank you. How about you, Aaron?
Yeah, I agree with Hannah too. It's not we don't always use native vegetation. We try to use resilient plants, like Hannah said, that we got these systems in urban areas that hit by sediment, cigarette butts, a lot of even drought conditions we deal with sometime and heavy rain. And then we do use non-natives, but you have to, even though they're desired, you have to keep them under control because we had systems where they overgrown in those systems and took over some of the natives. So they have to be managed too. But yeah, we use both, but mainly native.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, next question. As a grant manager for multiple GSI programs, we struggle with getting recipients to take O&M seriously and follow through after getting their final payments. Are there any ideas for programmatic requirements to encourage successful O&M after project completion? Hannah, do you want to open us up on that one?
Sure, yeah, and that's a tricky one. I would say the one great thing about having this first 5 years included is it really gets the plants established, and so they have those deep roots and can survive better, and they also have grown to kind of beat out weeds that might be coming in, and everything is just kind of set up to be less work for a property owner than those first couple of years where where it's really work intensive to get everything to be established. And so hopefully having a little bit less on their to-do list maybe would help encourage them to get out and actually knock out their to-do list on a less encouragement and more kind of forcing it. We do have a lot of times our municipalities will require the maintenance, and so in ours in particular, we have an 11-year conservation easement. Those first 5 years Greenprint manages, but the next 6 years, according to this conservation easement, the property owner is required to maintain the green infrastructure, and MMSD could theoretically come out and inspect and ask them to get back into compliance if it isn't working. But that obviously that's not quite encouraging. It's pushing a little more.
Yeah, and I would say there's a balance to be struck. I'm sure the person asking this question already knows that. So there's a balance to be struck between making the requirements so onerous that people don't want to participate in the program at all, and making them kind of open-ended and flexible enough that you're encouraging people to participate, but then you've got to kind of deal with a little bit of that fallout at the tail end of maintenance not happening. I think the approach that Greenprint has generally taken to try to bridge that gap is to make sure that we're really doing that maintenance planning with the property owner at the front end, so they really understand what those maintenance requirements are. Things are designed in a way that they can maintain. And then, as Hannah said, that, at that point of handoff, that we're actually in the field with the property owners and their maintenance folks, ensuring that there's not this additional barrier, which is, oh, I don't really know how to, it looks beautiful now, but I don't really know how to do the maintenance. So at least we can take that part out. We had been talking for some time, and I don't know actually, Hannah, if we've implemented this or not, but about having some kind of regular support reminders and support touch points over time, over say that first 5-year period of establishment. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, we were looking at setting up a system for existing property owners that we've worked with to set out just kind of like your standard email reminder of, hey, it's March, things are gonna start growing. You should probably get out there and check and see if there's been any erosion issues, and also get ready. The weeds are about to break free, and kind of giving a monthly cadence reminders or so to our property owners, market specific and potentially GSI specific, since different projects require different maintenance skills, and sending those out so that property owners are getting that in their inbox. We have not implemented that yet. We're still figuring out the nuances of the different markets and the different types of GSI, but it's an idea that we've been kicking around for a while now.
Mm-hmm. I will say too that the threat of the clawback on the grant, I've never actually seen it implemented. I've never actually seen a utility or municipality claw back a grant based on the lack of maintenance, but the specter of it can be helpful in getting the property owner to consider again their commitment to the maintenance, and we have had to utilize that a couple of times to get the property owner to continue with their commitment to the project. All right, Erin, how is PWD ensuring that private GSI is maintained properly? Perhaps you could also, we've got 5 minutes or 4 minutes left, so I'll just give you those couple of questions. You also have, how is retention for your crews? We don't have a robust program like you all, and we struggle with hiring and retention.
Okay, for the private, I don't think there's anything in place that I know of. I know we had talks about some type of inspection and audit, but I don't think there's nothing in place right now. If you, I mean, my email is in the slide. If you want to reach out, I can find out more information, but that's what I'm getting out. That's on the top of my head right now. To the question of retention, I mean, it's important that you retain talent. You invest in folks. You want them to stay and grow. We've been pretty successful, I think, because of the path that we've taken with workforce development. They get the early training of job readiness and all these things that they kind of already are like really motivated to get into this unit and work with us. But we try to implement things like highlighting progression charts through Power BI charts, showing the growth of the team. We share the future concepts I share with you, I share with the team. And I think everybody's pretty much bought into the vision of GSI in Philadelphia. They see the future, the vision.
Very cool. I always love inspiring people with being able to see the future. Another question for you, Erin. Who submits work orders, and how do residents voice concerns or issues with SMPs? And at some point, the next question for both of you would be experience with permeable pavement versus pavers. Do you have a preference for one over the other? And maybe Avery, I'll leave it at that in terms of our questions for today, so you can wrap us up.
Okay, I guess I'll answer the SMP submits. So that's a good question. So our work order system is CityWorks. That's our asset management system. When I first really took over the unit, I did everything. I inputted the data, I tracked cost and labor, I tracked everything. I created work orders, I submitted work orders, I did everything. As the team began to build, I already knew what I would have folks do as I delegated. So I put this on in the crew chief's spec that they would have to be a part of the CityWorks part. So they schedule their work order inboxes through CityWorks. I can see that live. Our scientists and engineers can see that. And then they upload pictures after every maintenance event. and then that is reviewed by the supervisor after a QA/QC effort is done. They go out, check the site, make sure it was done correctly. If they have to go back, they send them back. And then once that work order is closed, I expect that site to be done correctly. We are proactive. We're not complaint driven. That's why our frequency is so high. I don't think it's fair personally for someone in one community to have a louder voice and get something done compared to somebody in the another community that don't have a loud voice and they can't get their systems maintained. So we make sure that we're seeing our sites frequently. As far as complaints in the community, if it's a public safety issue or if it's just inquiry of when the next maintenance visit is, we'll let you know, hey, we're coming next week or you're on this part of the schedule. But we try to keep good relationships with our friends groups, our community members. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, Avery, can I hand it back to you?
Yeah. Thanks for all the great questions, everyone. And thank you to April and Hannah and Aaron for presenting with us today. I'll just take that back. So following this webinar, all attendees from today will receive a follow-up email with the slides and a link to our recording. We also ask that you complete our evaluation following this webinar, which should pop up automatically in your browser. Answering the evaluation is helpful to us because it lets us know what topics you want us to focus on in the future. And it lets us know and helps us plan webinars on topics that are important to you. So thank you again, and we hope to see you at future EFCN events. Thanks,
One
everyone.
thing I forgot to mention
Yes,
is that the Green Infrastructure Leadership Exchange is an amazing resource. If you're not aware of their work or connected as a member yet, highly recommend that. We'll include in the follow-up email some links to resources from the exchange. They have peer learning circles around maintenance and a bunch of resources. So highly recommend getting involved with them. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, y'all. Have a good one.